on my phone. 3 of the Giborim were mentioned first in order in this chapter: Adino Etzni, Elazar ben Dodo, and Shama ben Agay. These 3 were the ones responsible for splitting into the camp of the Plishtim in Beit Lechem, drawing the water, endangering their life, coming back to the low Judean hills in the Beit Shemesh area. And we learned about David's refusal to drink those waters. And he wants to bring a point home. What does it mean, the power and the leadership of a king, that he doesn't want to take advantage of the nation, take advantage of his soldiers, and therefore he doesn't want to benefit from such a dangerous mission that he even asked them to do. He mentioned, wow, I remember those waters when I was a young boy as they row at zone or something of that. Then we were told that who is amongst those breaking in verse 18? The head of that unit, Vavishai. Achi Yoav ben Tzuya. Interesting. We've seen it before as well. It's as if Avishai lives in the shadow of his super general brother called Yoav, which we'll just discuss a little further. David's question yesterday, why isn't, of the 37, how many? 37 warriors, why isn't Yoav's name mentioned? And here we're told, who is the head of the small little company that broke through the Plishtim camp? It's Avishai. Achi Yoav ben Tzuya. Tzuya is the sister of David. So if Avishai is the Yoav is the son of Tzuya, so he's the nephew of David. So to his brother Avishai. Interesting what he did. Who Rosh HaShalosh? HaShalosh is the head of the 3 unit. V'orer et chanito. His spear, sword, al shlosh meot chalal. He killed 300 people that day. Interesting, how does one guy kill 300 people? Or do we say maybe he gave the orders for other of his company of soldiers to do so, and maybe the killing is given in his name and his credit? The Tanakh doesn't detail here. Velo shema shlosha. So the head of this unit that broke through the Plishtim camp is Avishai. However, when we read the next pasuk, we're told that he is not in the major league of the top 3. How do we see that? Verse 19. Min hashlosha hachi nechbad vayilem lesar ve'ad hashlosha lova. You know, it doesn't reach the greatness of the 3 leading soldiers. In other words, he could have been the most distinguished of the soldiers going up there, but the Adashlosha, he's not on the level of the top 3, meaning Avishai doesn't get to the virtue of the 3 Giborim Rishonim that are mentioned beforehand, Adino, Elazar, Veshama. What does it tell us? Something that you may know. Madrigot. There are different levels of courage, of war expertise, military expertise, craftsmanship, and so on. But he was the one that basically broke through and killed so many. Yet you should know he's not on that level. So I want to further the question you asked yesterday. Of these 37 that we're about to read more, and I hope I brought a map here. I want to show you how unique the representation of these top warriors. We don't see in any event that David is accused of nepotism or favoring his own tribe of Yehuda. We're going to see that these 37 is a wonderful collection of all Am Yisrael. We'll see that in a moment. That's why I brought the map here. But the fact that Yoav ben Tzuya is not mentioned. It says, Dorsheni, thank you so much, sir. It says, we have to expound upon this. Why not? So what answer did we give yesterday?
We said that actually the first one is a code name for Yoav.
Oh, so maybe Adino Ha'etzni is a code name for him. However, it could be that the prophet decided not, as we see, to mention his name. And purposely, he did not mention his name. Why? We're learning here about David and his kingdom. We're learning about David and his lofty midot, his amazing management through Torah and mitzvot of leading a nation religiously, militarily, nationally, on many, many different fields, giving up his life to serve Am Yisrael. And we know that he had a hard life, and he had the rebellion of his son, and other problems with his son and daughter, and so on and so forth, and the taking of Bathsheba. He went through, it was not on easy street. He went through a very problematic life, yet every time he had a problem, he turned to Hashem. We saw parallel psukim in Psalms and Tehillim to what is written here. But it could very well be that the prophet decided to ignore Yoav and not put him here on the top 10 list or the top 30 list or so. Why? Even though he was the head of a Sanhedrin, even though he was of the greatest warriors, but however, he caused trouble to the king. He thought, Yoav, my way is the best way, and therefore didn't bother taking advice. We remember he assassinated Asael, he did this, did that, and therefore it could very well be that here's an Amirah, this is a saying, Yoav is not on the list, because in the end, he was a troublemaker, even though he was so mighty, so courageous, so victorious. However, we see that he caused a lot of problems. That could be another answer.
Chazal said that Adino Etzmi is Yoav?
Yeah, there's an opinion that says that he's Yoav, yes. Now we're going on to the next list, Pasuk Kaf. We're now going to see a very long description of a great fighter who led a unit called the Kreti Upleti. You've heard of that term, sir? The Kreti Upleti. That unit...
The leaks and refugees? Or the choppers and the refugees?
Maybe. And this guy, Uvenayo ben Yoyadam, Pasuk 20.
Or Pelatim can mean also like penetrating, no?
It could be. Ben Ishchai, interesting, his father's name. Rav Palim, he's very talented. He does a lot of great things. And where is he? Pasuk 20, Mikavtze'el. Kavtze'el is the Negev, southern Israel, of which is the Judean district, as some of you know. Look what he did. Huikat Shnei Ariel Moav, Vuyarad Vikat Ari Betoch Habor Biyom Ashalag. Amongst the things that is told to his great success is that he met up with two primary generals of Moav, Shnei Ariel Moav, and he wiped them out. Furthermore, he met up with a lion, not on a sunny day, but on a cold day. Why do we have to know what the weather was like? What does this say? Yeah. A weather report. Have you ever interviewed a lion on a cold day? How do lions manage on a cold day as versus human beings?
They hibernate?
No. Does the cold weather affect a lion? You think so? I see you don't meet up with lions too much in Germany or other countries.
Leopards like snow.
They like the sun, no?
It doesn't bother these guys, the weather. So even though the obvious difficulty you would have meeting up with lions, you think would have bothered him, and man, you have to thaw yourself out of this cold weather. You can hardly move. You're just like shivering. Your body is contracted and not expanding and working freely. Okay, how does a person act when he's very cold? He contracts himself. He shivers. That's correct. So in spite of that, he was able to wipe out a lion inside a boar. And inside this pit, you don't have a lot of leeway, flexibility, and he was able to overcome him. So this reminds us of David HaMelech, who we're told that was able to overcome a bear and lion in the Judean desert under Beit Lechem. So Beneo ben Yoda, he's a tough cookie, okay? He's a tough person. What he can do with his bare hands is remarkable. Pasuk, and not by mere incident is he made part of the top, force of David. Some say that he was one of his bodyguards, if I'm not mistaken. In any event, let's continue and see what is told here regarding him. Okay, so this pasuk is revealing how great Bnei ben Yehuda is. For what else? V'ikait ish Mitzri.
Who's the Ish Mitzvah? What does Chazal say? Because an Ish, it's like an important man.
Yeah, one of the leaders of Egypt. We don't really read about any wars regarding Egypt. It seems that the southern border is very quiet during the time, these decades and so on. I didn't see anything that someone in particular. Chazal say that he was one of the giants.
Oh.
Hikait ish mitzri asher mar'eh. He had like a scary look. He looked ugly. Uviyad mitzri chanit vayirid alav bashavet. Benaiah was able to overdo a giant mitzri that has a spear, and all he had was a stick or a staff. Vayigzol et hachanit miyad mitzri vayargel b'chanito. Again, if I had the talent, I and Jake, we would we would put on a skit here right now where he's the giant. He's ugly looking. Of course, I take the better looking position. And he has the sword. Just raise your hand for a second. And I would say, you see what's over there? And I would just take it there and then stab him to death. And something like that. He was able to steal. By the way, the Gemara, when it's taught...
That's like a very big street move, but you did it so well.
Thank you, sir. Compliments will get you nowhere. In any event, if I'm not mistaken, even the Gemara teaches us that stealing from this pasuk is taking something out of the possession of a person into your possession, and it's learned from here. See, it says "Vayigzol et hachanit miyad," from the hand of the Mitzri. Part 22. Elu asa ben Benaiah ben Yehoyada velo shem b'shlosha hagiborim. Okay, he has a name. What type of name does he have, gentlemen? It seems that he was amongst the company that broke through the Plishtim camp to bring water to David, and he's on that team. How great is he? Yet, how great and how limited? Verse 23. Min hashloshim nichbad. He's of the group, that we're going to be reading now, about 30 people. He maybe was the most respectful, courageous warrior of the 30. However, Vela Shlosha Loba. In other words, the first three, Tachkamoni, Elazar, and Shammah, he doesn't reach their level. So again, here the prophet is showing us how there are different levels of courage and craftsmanship in going to war. Another great warrior of David, 24, Asael, the younger brother Achioav.
What is Vayismeu?
Vayismeu David al Mishmato. He made him the mifaked of like the bodyguard, what we call in Hebrew the Mishmar HaMelech, the special Mishmar HaMelech, the special guards of the king. Okay, and it was a force that's called the Kreti Upleti. It's mentioned earlier in the Tanakh. It's not mentioned here. I don't know why, but that was like the special force unit. What do they call the special squad? Squad? Is that the word? A squad team?
SWAT team.
SWAT team. Does SW?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what it stands for.
Special weapons and tactics.
Wow, you know it all. You've been watching so many movies. I know.
I know that from the movie.
Special. Okay. There. I'll show you later a picture of someone that was on a special unit for special tactics for the engineering, and I'll show you pictures. Someone I know. In any event, so he was head of this squad, the Kreti Upleti. Now let's see about Asael. Asael Achioav Bashloshim. He's amongst the 30 warriors. Elchanan ben Dodo, his cousin, and they're from Beit Lechem. As you all know, Asael was killed by Avner, unfortunately, when Jews were messing around between the forces of Judah and the forces of Binyamin around the pool there. In what was the name of that pool? In Givon. We learned earlier in the beginning of the Sefer. In any event, we were told that Asael was Kal Beraglav.
Yeah, yes.
He was a very fast runner, just like one of the deer. And the Gra, the Vilna Gaon explains that Asael was like the mifakeh, the commander of the 30. In other words, and the beginning of this minyan of 30 soldiers starts with the cousin Elchanan. So we see that Asael certainly, until he was alive, was very special. Now, let's go on. Shama Charodi, Elika Charodi. What's common here between these two soldiers? That's right. Can you show me on this map where Charod is? There's a special... do you know where it is? Do you know where Ein Charod is? No? Remember where we hiked in the water route under the Gilboa Mountain? Right. So if you go to the edge of the Gilboa Mountains, you have the Jezreel Valley underneath. Emek Israel, one of the plateau, flat places of the land of Israel, from the Haifa port until the Jordan River. So if you go under there are many kibbutzim that were built in the 20s and 30s by secular Zionists that had the return of the land of Israel. So under the Gilboa Mountains, Ein Charod, you would have this area right over here would be Ein Charod, okay, not far from the Beit Shan Valley. So of his great soldiers, he's taking someone from one of the northern tribes. Two men from this area, one called Shama, and the other called Elika. Next. Cheletz HaPalti, Ira Venikesha Teko'i. The second one you know, Ira, comes from the area of Tekoa. Where is Tekoa? Eastern Gush Etzion, that's right. Or some of our rabbis live there. So that's the area of that. And Cheletz, but regarding Cheletz HaPalti, some say that he's from the area of Ephraim, which is north of Yerushalayim. Aviezer ha'antoti, mivunai ha'chushati. Aviezer is from the town of Anatot. Who was born, bred, lived in Anatot? Yirmiyahu, the one that prophesied the destruction of the temple. And then we see the smoke coming off of the Temple Mount after the destruction of the temple. So that's Aviezer Anatit, which is the area of Binyamin, okay? The home place of Yirmiyahu. And what about this guy called Mivunai Hachushati? Huh? Some say Hachushati is this. When we go out of the Gilo tunnels going south, after en route to the area of Beit Lechem, where we really don't go traveling through it because of the peace that we have with the Arabs, we have an intersection. We can turn right to go to this lovely Haredi city called Beitar. There's a big Arab village before Beitar called Husan. So some say Hushan, and Husan, the shin, or the sin, is mitchalef, interchanges with the samech. So this would be, of course, the Judean area, and Muvunai is from that area. Next, Kavchet verse 28, Tzalmon. Tzalmon ha'achochi. Huh?
Where is it? There's also Tzalmon Achoch.
And it says, one second, Ma'ari ha'netofati. Netofati, some say, is the area of Beit Lechem, the area of Beit Lechem. And Achochi, I didn't find. One second, did we see already Elazar from the same area? Do you remember? Did we see in Elazar? Yes. We saw in verse 9 that one of the three top soldiers of David, Elazar, was from the same area, Ben Achochi. Maybe it's just the name of his father and not the name of the town. It's not clear to me.
When I was working in a secular archaeology department, I heard some people call somewhere by the Carmel Mountains Natuf, something also.
Netofet?
Something like same route.
Netofet. We have in the Beit Shemesh area, what are they? Caves that have the dripping of certain, the stalagmite caves, right? Right. What is it called in Hebrew? This word over here,
Which one?
from the word netofati.
Oh, and like dripping cave?
Right. So it could be that when you're going down the Beit Shemesh hills, the Beit Lechem hills towards the Beit Shemesh, that's what I remember, but I don't recall. I'd like to
Also,
find out what that is.
caves up. It's this area with caves
Yes, is that right? In the Carmel Mountains,
to the east.
to the east, going towards.
Like on this, oh sorry. I think it's this valley area here.
That's interesting. Okay, that would be from Zvulun. Could be. Pasuk 29 Kaftet. Mr. Chalev ben Ba'anah Netofati, the same town, which is Beit Lechem. Itai ben Rivai, Megivat b'nei Binyamin. What place have we studied in this book called Givat b'nei Binyamin? I see it every day when I travel. That is the Givat Shaul, right? We have next to Kiryat Moshe a Givat Shaul. That's not the Givat Shaul named after King Saul. The Givat Shaul is in the Binyamin route, overlooking Shoafat of today. On the other side is Pisgat Ze'ev, and that's where today you can see the leftovers of a gigantic edifice, a gigantic building built by the former King Hussein of Jordan. And his plans was to have a palace in eastern Yerushalayim, like he had a palace in Ammon, Jordan. However, Hashem had different plans for him. 6-day war, the Jordanians were kicked out, overwhelmed by the army of God, of the Jewish people. So that would be Givat Shaul. Givat B'nai Binyamin would be the ancient Givat Shaul, which is today right next to Pisgat Ze'ev. Pasuk Lamed, verse 30, Binayahu Piratoni. Where is Piratoni? That's the Ephraim area, not far from Shechem, west of the city of Shechem. Hidai Minachalei Ga'ash. Minachalei Ga'ash. I don't seem to have any understanding where that is. But as we're learning, we're seeing tremendous amount of great warriors from scattered places all over the country. Lamed Aleph, Avi Alvon, Ha'arvati. Arvati is the Judean desert, some say it's next to Wadi Kelt. Wadi Kelt is a wadi in the Judean desert that brings rainwater in the winter down to the Mayanot, the springs there, and eventually goes down to the Yam HaMelech, the Dead Sea. And it was excavated, that area, by a German archaeologist called Kelt. I don't know what his first name is. And the Vadi remains that name for the last 150 years or so. Vadi Kelt. It's mamash underneath Michmash. If we know where Michmash is, where Yonatan surprised the Plishtim army, we have a Hebrew yeshiv there today. The registrar lives there, and many others. Pasuk Lamed Aleph. That's Avi Aleph. And then we have Azmavet Habar Chumi. Azmavet Habar Chumi, I have no idea where that area is. Lamed Bet 32, El Yachbal, interesting names. Hashalvoni. What does that sound like?
Fox.
What place in Israel is called Shalavim? Mentioned in the book of Joshua as well. Shalavim is more than midway between Yerushalayim and Tel Aviv. It's called the Ayalon Valley, Emek Ayalon. Do you remember the war against the Gibeonites? That they fled going west, and then God brought down these amazing stones and allowed Yoshua to overcome these Canaanite nations that came to attack the Gibeonites. And then Yoshua ordered God to stop the sun's movement. And he said, Shemesh b'Givon dome, v'yareach be'emek Ayalon. Ayalon has been settled 70, 80 years ago. A religious kibbutz was built there called Kibbutz Shalavim. There's a yeshivat Hesder there. There's a religious town there. Rabbi Spankenthal from the Spanish Army used to live there for many years until he recently moved to Beit El. So it's a very special community there. That's part of the area called Dan, Gush Dan. Today, Gush Dan is the most populated area. Petach Tikva, Bnei Brak, and all these areas, the most populated, densely populated area in the country. So Ayachba, he's from that area of Shalavim, which is the area of Dan, and it says Bnei Yashen Yehon Natan, which Bnei Yashen is the father Okay, and that's somewhere in the area called Latrun. Do you know where the Latrun area is?
Where the tanks are lined up like an entrance.
Right, there's an army museum there. In other words, when I want to leave Yerushalayim and go down to the lowland area going south towards Ashkelon, Ashdod, we come down about 500 meters and we come to a junction called the Latrun Junction. It was a very key place in the War of Independence. That's Latrun, and that's part of the Dan region as well. Pasuk Lamed Gimel 33, Shama HaHarari. Harari, it sounds like the same name that we saw, one of the three most top warriors. We saw the same name there, also called Shama. Harari, although I don't know where that is. Next, Lamedala 34, Elif.
That's the name of a soldier, yeah?
Yes, one of the top 37, the top 30 after the original 7. Eliphelet ben Achsabai ben Amachati. So it doesn't seem that we have a place here for him.
We did Achiam ben Sharar Ha'arari.
Yeah. Eliam ben Achitofel. Agiloni. We know who he is. Do you remember who Achitofel was, gentlemen? Obviously from the town called Gilo. Gilo is the most southeastern neighborhood of Yerushalayim. We went on our special Shabbaton to Gush Etzion. We went through the Gilo tunnels. That's the most southeastern neighborhood of Yerushalayim. And he was a bad advisor. He was the top advisor for David. He joined the ones against David. And then he took his life away. Unfortunately, committed suicide. But his son was a top soldier, a top Gibor for David. Pasuk Lamed Hey, as we're closing out the last three verses, 35. These people, of course, deserve so much credit, the warriors of David, and therefore the prophet sees importance to mention their names. Next, Lamed Hey 35. Well, how would we pronounce his name? Chatzrai HaKarmeli. So he comes from the Carmel. Where are the Carmel Mountains?
The north.
Sir?
The north.
We're in the north?
Like the northwest, like the east.
The northwest. Very good. We have this big mountain range. We have the western side of the Carmel. We have the eastern side of the Carmel. It's lovely camping sites, hiking, lovely greenery before some Arab arsonist burnt down good parts of it, unfortunately, a few years ago. Terrible fires. Yeah, firefighters that we lost. Was a terrible. How many years was that? 5, 6 years ago, 10 years ago. I forgot how long. We lost a lot of firefighters in that terrible matter. I would assume this is the area towards Zvulun, the Nachala of Zvulun, perhaps, although I'm not sure. And we have another warrior called Pa'arai Ha'arbi. Some say that it's 13 kilometers southwest of Hebron, which would also be the Judean area. Lamed Vav 36, Yigal ben Natan. From where? Mitzova. Aha. Tzova is here, the corridor to Yerushalayim. There's a kibbutz there. Okay? There's an amusement park for children there. No, I don't get percentages. Okay? You thought I did, right? I'll give you discounted tickets. In any event, that could very well be Binyamin or Yehuda. It's not clear. And then it says Bani Hagadi. So Bani is maybe, that's the short, is it Beni? Is that what you call Beni? Bani. So Bani, they say, is a Shem Kitzur for Benayahu, who we saw this name before already. And where is he from? Hagadi, from the tribe of Gad, which is the other side of the Jordan River, this area over here, as we see. Next to last, Pasuk, Tzelek, with interesting names that we don't see today. Ha'amoni. What? He's an Ammoni? Is he Jewish? Answer, he's a Ger. He's a Ger from Ammon. Today, Ammon in English is called? Amman, Jordan, Ammon. Okay, and here we see it. I see the lights of Ammon every night. If there's some visibility, I live over here and I see the lights of Amman. Next, who do we have? So we see this amazing collection of warriors from all over the country. And then to finish it off, we have Nachrai HaBe'eroti. If I remember correctly, Be'erot could be the area of Atarot of today, the former industrial area of northern Yerushalayim. And this guy Nacharai, he was the caddy. Nosei Klei Yoav ben Tzuria. Wow, he was carrying the way. He was the weapon carrier for Yoav ben Tzuria. Imagine, give me a 10 millimeter, give me a 20 millimeter, give me a 75 inch. He would have all different types of swords and spears in his arsenal. And now, the last two psukim, Ira HaYitri. What does that sound like? Who knows a southeastern town of the Judean hills, not far from the Arad, not far from the Dead Sea? Yatir. No, Jericho is way, way north. Here is taking the Dead Sea. Yatir. Yatir is a southeastern town of the southern Hebron Mountains. So that could be from there. And also another warrior, Garev HaYitri. The last, and not the least, Mr. Uriah Chiti, Kol Shloshim V'Sheva. Isn't that interesting? We're going to ask ourselves, why is Uriah mentioned last? He was a battler. He did not want to come home. He was ordered to come home by David. Uriah was married to Bathsheba. And the way or form that David took her in marriage, even though it was halachically according to Shulchan Aruch, which was not yet written, it was everything according to Shulchan was okay. Yet for someone on the level of a David, it was like a chilul Hashem, and for that he lost the child when she became pregnant. She, what is that word? She miscarried. No, she didn't miscarriage. He was born and he died, an infant death right away or something like that. So we're going to ask ourselves, why is Uriah mentioned last? And we're going to learn when we get to the next chapter that this is clearly like the what? The connected to the troubles that we're going to learn in the last chapter here. And that we'll see tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem, when we start these matters. Shalom.